Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Good to be in the house of the Lord today. Boker Tov. Good morning. Tell your neighbor Boker Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Good morning and peace of the Sabbath to you. Today we are going to look at the Torah portion, Parashat Bo. Parashat Bo, which means to come. It's translated sometimes to go. And Moses is going to go to Pharaoh, but really he's going to come with the Lord to the inner chamber of Pharaoh's heart and see how hard it's getting. So the message today is called Moonlit Midnight Miracle. Can you say that with me? Moonlit Midnight Miracle. A little tongue twister for you today. And we say a hearty Shabbat Shalom to all of our first-timers. Make sure that black is in. Is it in? Got it in there, Greg? There we go. We say a hearty Shabbat Shalom to our first-time guests here today. Let's give the Lord a hand clap for those who are first-timers and those that are returning family members. We say, Bruchim Habaim, welcome to all of you in Shabbat Shalom. And this week's message comes from Exodus 10:1 through 13:16. We had Yirmiyahu, which is Jeremiah the prophet, 46 verses 13 through 28, and then Luke 22, 7 through 30 was our Brit Hadashah, our New Covenant read. How many are ready for 10 minutes of Torah? Yes. Now, if you're not ready, we'll put through the benediction. How many are ready for 10 minutes of Torah? Yes. All right, there we go. So Mosaic instruction, I always like to get excited about the Word of God. I don't know about you. It's like our new manna for the morning, right? It's really our showbread. So today we're going to get some showbread today. You've had your 6 days of manna. Hopefully you've studied your manna this week. We're going to look at chapter 10, verse number 1. Not all my Hebrew font came out there, but it says, Then Adonai said to Moses, Go, or in Hebrew, Bo, to Pharaoh, come to Pharaoh literally, because I have hardened, the Hebrew hikbalati, from the root kavad, I have hardened, causatively I have hardened or made heavy, his heart and the heart of his servants. Literally, God's hand was upon his heart, making it heavy. When we're in sin, the heaviness of God's hand or presence brings conviction. When we're living righteously before him, the heaviness of his presence confirms that he's there. And so we should never be concerned about God's presence being heavy upon us. It should be. But if we're not right, like Pharaoh's heart was not right, it creates a grief or a heaviness of heart. And it says, not only his heart, but the heart of his servants. He says, so that I might show these signs, or my signs, in their midst. Look at verse number 2. It says, And so you may tell your son and your grandchildren that I have what I have done in Egypt, as well as my signs that I did among them, so you may know that I am Adonai. Now, notice that God's saying it's for your children. So that's why we keep Passover every year, to rehearse in the ears of our children that God brought us out of Egypt. And then every generation should see themselves as slaves that came out of Egypt. How many know we were slaves spiritually that came out of Egypt? And so we look at verse 3 and it says, So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to him, This is what Adonai, the God of the Hebrews. Notice he's called himself the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now he says, I'm the God of the Hebrews. And he says, How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Notice that even when God says, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, he was really saying in Hebrew in this verse, I will make heavy your heart. Meaning my hand will be upon you like a potter is on clay. And if the clay resists me or refuses to submit to me, I'll make you a rough vessel or a vessel of dishonor. But if you submit and become molded like Moses was molded, you become a vessel of honor. So it's our choice. Our free will that has to submit to the sovereign will of God. He's the potter, we're the clay. So Pharaoh became a vessel of dishonor. And it was his choice. Notice what the Lord says. How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go. Literally in Hebrew, Beshalach, send them out of there. So they will serve me. Notice the divine service, which is really translated in many versions, worship. They may worship me. Because the tabernacle was a place of what? Worship. But it was also a place of divine service. So God says, they'll not be your slaves, they'll be my servants. I'm going to set them free from your bondage so they can be free to lift their hands and worship me. Isn't it better to be a servant of God than a slave to the world? Yes. And so we see, it goes on in verse number, or or actually if we go from verse number 3 of Exodus 10 and go backwards to Exodus chapter 7, the first time we see a hardening going on, it says here in verse 7, verse 1, chapter 7, verse 1, "So Adonai said to Moses, See, I have set you as God to Pharaoh." This was last week's read. "And Aaron your brother will be your prophet." Even though we really didn't need a mouthpiece, because he was an excellent speaker, the Bible says. Mighty in word and deed, according to Acts chapter 7. He didn't stutter. Preachers that say Moses stuttered, it's incorrect. There's a different Hebrew term for stutter. He never stuttered. The text does not say that. It says he made an excuse, "I have a heavy tongue and a heavy mouth." That's a Hebraic phrase. It means it takes me a long time to get out what I want to say. Yeah. In other words, instead of to the point, I go long term in the conversation. I go around the wilderness journey. In other words, I'll never get to the point with Pharaoh. He'll just hear me rattle on over and over again. He never stuttered. That's why the Bible says he was mighty in word and deed in Egypt. So there's no way he could have been a stutterer. It was an excuse. I don't want to go. Send somebody else. Okay, I'll send your brother with you. Notice the brother never spoke for him. And nowhere did it say that God healed his tongue. He just automatically did what God called him to do, was speak. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. That's what Moses was. He's an example of the oracles of God. Beautiful. Did you already get something out of that? Yes. All right, good. Now let's keep reading. Verse 2. "You are to speak all that I command you, and Aaron your brother is to speak to Pharaoh." Again, this is to comfort Moses. "So that he will let Bnei Israel, or the sons of Israel, go out of this his land." Look at verse 3. "Yet I will," future tense, "I will harden Pharaoh's heart." Now in this verse, he's not hardening his heart. He says, "I will." Just like Abraham says, God will provide for himself a lamb. In the future, 2,000 years later, God provided the lamb. John the Baptist was a witness of it, right? And so, "I will," future tense, "harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and wonders in the land." So when will God harden his heart? When he shows his signs and his wonders in the land. What are the signs and wonders? The finger of God brought 10 plagues, because we have 10 fingers. So the hand of the Lord was upon Israel for blessing, and the other hand of the Lord was on Egypt for the curse. Because I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. So the hand of the Lord was upon Moses, and the hand of the Lord was upon Israel to protect. But the hand of the Lord in judgment was upon Egypt. So Pharaoh and the magician said, "This is the finger of God." How many fingers? Well, if you want to get technical, 8 and 2 thumbs, right? But let's not get technical. Okay. It goes on to say, if we look at the Hebrew gives us 2 purposes for hardening. And it's based on 2 verbs. Now, there's a couple other verbs that's translated hardened, but here's the 2. The first one is chazak. Now, at the end of every Torah portion, we say what? Chazak, chazak, benit hazeh. Not the Torah portion, but book of the Torah. So after each sefer of the Torah, every book of the Torah, we actually say chazak, chazak, which means be strong, and you will be strengthened. Benit hazeh. Chazak refers to cause a strengthening of willpower. Okay? The other verb that is translated to harden, which is confusing at times, is the one we already read about, kavod, where we get the word kavod, glory of God. The kavod Adonai is the glory of God. Now, the glory of God rests heavy upon a believer, amen? We feel the weight of his glory. But if you're a sinner, the weight of his glory is too much for you, and no flesh can glory in his presence. So you will die in his presence. Therefore, it feels like the hand of the Lord is crushing you. It feels like he's taking your heart, and he's heavy upon your heart, which a potter puts his hands heavy on clay to form it. But if the clay is resistant or too dry or is not moldable, then it feels like it's going to break it. God just put pressure on Pharaoh. Made his heart feel heavy. He felt the hand of God or the finger of God. Right? Each plague came down. He felt another part of the hand of God being upon him. That's what the verb means, heavy. And this means to cause heaviness of grief through emotions. I mean, sometimes our emotions are all over the place. Think about the heaviness that makes you sometimes hard-hearted. Sometimes it's because you feel weak and you want to be strong, so you push yourself to be mean. I shared this with a group of young men. I said, have you ever been mean to a girl that you wanted to push away because she was showing her crush she had on you? And you're like, I don't want her to like me, so I'm just going to be mean to her. You know, it's like the young kid that pulls the pigtails of the girl sitting in front of her because he's still going to be mean. You know, and you know, he smells like puppy dog tails, right? You know, so, you know, remember the old rhymes we used to sing when we were kids? It's funny, you grow up liking that same girl that you've been pulling your pigtails for years, right? Anybody pull any pigtails today, men? But it says, to cause heaviness of grief through emotions. Now, let's take a look at the 5 times that Pharaoh hardened his own heart. We have Pharaoh hardened his heart for the first 5 plagues before Hashem hardened it. Number 1 was dam in Hebrew. What is that? Blood. Come on, sound like you're at Passover. Blood. That's the first sprinkle of your finger from the second cup, right? Dam is what? Blood. Sfardea is what? Frogs. Kinim is what? Lice. Arov is what? Dever is what? These are the first 5 plagues. The first one, blood, is in Exodus 7, 13 through 14, and in verse 22, that Pharaoh's heart was strengthened and heavy with grief. So both verbs are used. 13 and 14 and 22 use two of the verbs. One to be strengthened in the weak will. God will strengthen your will. Because sometimes we want to do something, but our weak will is not strong enough to finish, right? So God says, I want to help you finish what you started. But in this case, he strengthened his own heart. So imagine Pharaoh. I can't control these people. They're multiplying. They're getting too big. I'm a weak leader. So I'm going to strengthen myself and act like I'm a tough guy. Sometimes we try to strengthen our will too much. And we put our foot down. And we put our, we get our will strong. And we do all these things to try to prove who deep inside we feel we're too weak to really be. Now what if we just gave our weakness to God? Because when we are weak, he is strong. He will strengthen us in our weakness. Now, the second time, frogs, is Exodus 8:15. Pharaoh's heart, it says, was heavy with grief. That's the word kavod, meaning heavy. So now it's an emotional thing. It's not a will thing, it's an emotional thing. So you go back and forth between, I feel weak, I can't do this, I want to do it, but my will is too weak. How many know Paul said, when I want to do good, evil's right there present with me, and I don't have the will to perform what is good. And so sometimes we want to do what's right, but we're not strong enough. Other times we want to do what's wrong. And so the enemy loves to try to strengthen us in that area, put people around us to influence us. But even the Lord says, oh, you started this, I'm going to finish it. But in this case, this is not God, this is Pharaoh. Pharaoh is hardened because of an emotional grief or heaviness. The third one lies, Exodus 8:19, Pharaoh's heart was hardened or strengthened. So again, we go back to chazak again. So all these verses are going back between the two verbs. In English, we translate it one way, hardened. In Hebrew, it's completely different. 1 minute's an issue of will. The next minute's an issue of emotions. How many know that's the way our soulish life is like? Our souls need to be anchored in the Lord because we're constantly going back between will and emotion with our messed up minds, and that double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Pharaoh is a perfect example of a double-minded man. I'll let him go, I won't let him go. I'll let him go, I won't let him go. His weakness was in his will, but his grief caused him emotional pain. So, then we have gnats and flies, Exodus 8:32, Pharaoh's heart was heavy again with grief. And then finally, with the disease of livestock, Pharaoh's heart was heavy with grief. Now, let's go to the next time we see the hardening, and we see God finally hardening after the 5th plague, on plague number 6. Look at chapter 9, verse 11. Moreover, the magicians could not stand before Moses because of what? Boils. Which one? Boils. Bowls. And this is shechim. And that's the boils that came upon everybody because they were on the magicians as well, as on all the Egyptians. But Adonai hardened the heart of Pharaoh so that he did not listen to them. So watch this. Here's the hand of God bringing the plagues, but not hardening Pharaoh. The first 5 fingers of God brought the plagues. But it was those first 5 plagues that made Pharaoh harden his own heart. Trying to be the tough guy. Trying to get over his depression that he was losing his kingdom. And losing his labor force. And all of a sudden, now after the 5th plague, now plague 6, now God says, now I'm going to step in and finish it with my hand. And I'm going to crush Egypt by my last 5 plagues. So here's plague number 6. God finally is in active force hardening. Because before that, God said, I will harden, I will harden. Now he says, I hardened. So God doesn't harden Pharaoh until plague number 6. So let's not make God the cruel God that we think he is. Oh, he's hardening people. Chapter 11, verse 4 says, so Moses said, this is what Adonai says. At around what time?
Midnight.
I can't hear you.
Midnight.
What time?
Midnight.
At around midnight I will go out into the midst of Egypt. Watch this, chapter 12, verse 1. Now Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month, literally this moon, will mark the beginning of moons for you, or the beginning of the new months for you. The word month comes from the word moon. The moon. It's the cycle of the moon. Health is a cycle of healing. Wealth is a cycle of wellness, or being well off. And month is a cycle of the moon. The Celtics used to worship the moon on Monday, the sun on Sunday, Saturn on Saturday, down the line. Planets, okay? Look what it says here. So everything's going to be based on the moon. Based upon the what? Moon. The moon, the new moon. This is the commandment for the new moon. But look at verse 27. You are to say, it is the sacrifice of Adonai's what? Passover. Because he passed over the houses of Bnei Israel in Egypt, but when he struck down the Egyptians, but spared our household, so the people bowed their heads and what? Worship. Notice the focus was worship. Give them 3 days to leave Egypt so they can go worship me, so they can serve me. So they bowed their head to the ground and they what? Worshipped. Verse 28 says, then Bnei Israel, the sons of Israel, went and did it. They did just as Adonai had commanded Moses and Aaron. So it came about at what time?
Midnight.
What time? Midnight, that Adonai struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on the throne to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn cattle. That's plague number what? 10. Boils was 6. We jump down later in the chapter to chapter 12, and now we're on the last plague. This is the final one. This is the death of the firstborn. So from the blood of the Nile, right, to the blood of the death of the firstborn, we have sprinkling of the second cup, the blood of the grape, of the fruit of the vine, from the second cup at Passover, and that reenacts the plagues. Usually on a napkin or a plate, they just flick it every time we say one of the plagues, okay? So now, let's take a look at the final verse here, verse 42. It says, it was a night of what? Watching. A night of what? Watching. Adonai to bring them out of the land of Egypt. This same night is a night of what? Vigil. In Hebrew, in Spanish, a vigilia is an all-night prayer meeting. Or a vigil is an all-night prayer meeting. So this was a night of vigil for Adonai. To stay up all night and watch God do this. For all Bnei Israel throughout their generations. So every year you're going to have an all-night vigil. You're going to have an all-night prayer meeting, basically. You're going to basically see God do the work year after year when you keep Passover. Now, how many ready for some prophet time? Yeah. Now, I used up a little bit of the prophet reading for the Torah because I went over on 10 minutes. But nonetheless, here's our kind of 10-minute of Torah time. Or 10 minutes of the prophet reading time, the Haftarah. We're going to actually go to not a typical read of Haftarah, but just something that comes after in a sense, which would be Chronicles. Okay? Which is really in the writings category. But look what it says in 2 Chronicles 7:12. Then Adonai appeared to Solomon at what time? At night. And said to him, I have heard your what? Prayer. What's a vigil? An all-night prayer meeting. In other words, just like God heard Moses and the children of Israel pray all night and pray for deliverance, and God delivered them through the blood of the Lamb, now Solomon's praying all night in the temple. So what used to be a tabernacle experience is now a temple experience. And Solomon was praying all night. He says, I heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself for a house of sacrifice. Israel leaves Egypt to sacrifice to God, right? If I shut up heaven that there is no rain, or command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence, wait a minute, plagues. What did God do on Egypt? He sent plagues. What did God promise disobedient nations? They'll be plagued. They'll have pestilence in the land. How many know the tribulation period will have pestilence? A witness or a prophet that has the power to bring down plagues will be a witness for Israel. Another one will call down fire from heaven or shut up the heavens so it doesn't rain for 3.5 years. Sounds like Moses and Elijah, doesn't it? Who was on either side of Yeshua in Matthew 17? Moses and Elijah. Who represents the law and the prophets? The law, Moses. Elijah, next to Moses, is the key prophet that demonstrates the many miracles like Moses. So the law and the prophets reveal Yeshua. Who else would we expect to show up in the tribulation period? But the law and the prophets. Not Enoch. He's not even a prophet to Israel. That was pre-flood. But the only prophets to Israel that would stand for the plagues coming down and turning the water to blood? Moses. And the plagues of Egypt. And so we see this is the picture we see. Now, let's take a look at verse 14. You all know this. Let's read it together. When my people, over whom my name is called, humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their evil ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. Don't you know God could have done that for Pharaoh? But he didn't turn. But Israel was protected in their houses. While it was dark in Egypt, it was light in the homes of the Israelis. When the death of the firstborn happened in Egypt, it never touched the Israelis because they called upon the name of the Lord. Now, let's take a look at the words of David, the psalmist, in 119:57. Last week we took you through a journey of all the psalms that sung at Passover. And Psalms 113 to 118 and then 136. Great read. How many enjoyed those psalms last week? Amen. I'm going to do one in between that's not normally done, but it relates very well. Psalms 119:57. This is under the letter Chet, which means to fence in. It says, Adonai is my portion. I promise to guard your words. Amen. I have entreated your favor, meaning prayed for your favor, Lord, with all my heart. Be gracious to me according to your word. I have considered my ways and turned my feet back to your testimonies. In other words, my people call by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways. Right. Here's an example of that. I'll turn back to your testimonies, meaning the testimonies when you delivered Israel from Egypt, that's one of the testimonies. Okay? Look at verse 60. I hasten and I do not delay to obey your mitzvot. Word of mitzvot? Commandments. What did God give Israel when they left Egypt? Commandments. Look at the next verse. Look at verse 61. The ropes of the wicked are coiled around me, but I did not forget your Torah. What did God give when God gave Israel that victory of leaving Egypt? He gave them the Torah at Mount Sinai. He says, I didn't forget your Torah. Verse 62, say it with me. At midnight I rise to praise you because of your righteous rulings. God gave him the Torah, God gave him righteous rulings, and through his righteous judgments, he delivered Israel from Egypt. So here's a picture of why Israel was delivered. Give me 3 days, Moses said, so we can go out and praise our God. Give me 3 days so we can sacrifice to our God. Give me 3 days. How interesting. Those 3 days, they had to go through that sea of reeds, the Red Sea, Yam Suf. And when they went through and got on the other side, like 3 days later, Yeshua was in the grave, 3 days, 3 nights, perfect picture. Yeshua dies at Passover, 3 days later is the day of first fruits. He's the first fruits from the dead. What did they resurrect as? First fruits from the dead. They should have been dead, but instead their enemy was dead. Drowned in the sea. Where is God throwing your sins? In the sea. The horse and the rider, right? Drowned into the sea. So at midnight, I will what? Praise you. What time? Midnight. Wait a minute, but midnight is the darkest hour. But if you've got a full moon to guide you, because on the 14th into the 15th day of the Jewish month is always a full moon. So any festival like Tabernacles or Passover that starts on the 15th or begins a unleavened bread process on the 15th, it's a full moon. So they're leaving in haste, but they're being led by this beautiful, gorgeous, brilliantly white moon that's leading them in the darkness. How many know there's always a light in the dark place? God shines a light into the dark places. So when we look at this passage, we see that there's a full moon, and it's at midnight that this takes place. Isn't that powerful? Look at verse 63. It says, I am a companion, or in Hebrew, chaver. We say together, chavarim, friends. Chavarim, my friend. So chaver is a friend. I am a companion or a friend of all who fear you or respect you, of those who observe your precepts, which is the commandments of God, the Torah. The earth is full of your loving kindness. His love endures forever, right? Ki leolam hasdo. Adonai, teach me your decrees. So notice that the keeping of the Torah is connected with that midnight cry, or that midnight praise, or that midnight prayer, that all-night vigil. Now, let's finalize this with some Brit Hadashah. You ready for some Brit Hadashah?
Yes.
I'm going to go, first of all, to Matthew 25. It sets us up from a teaching of Yeshua, a parable of Yeshua, the parable of the 10 virgins. Yeshua said in Matthew 25:1, then the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 what? Virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. What time of the night do you think it is? Midnight, late in the night. It says, now 5 of them were wise, and 5 were what? Foolish. Verse 3 says, those who were foolish took their lamps. How interesting. Israel had lamps or light in their homes, and Egypt was full of darkness. God says, I called you to be a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people. Called you out of darkness. Why? So we could praise him, because he brought us into the marvelous light. Here's the imagery. From darkness of Egypt to the light of God leading them with the Shekinah glory. That light that led them, fire by night, cloud by day. God led them by the light. Not only the moon, but the presence of God was there. It says, those who were foolish took their lamps, those who were foolish, took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. That's pretty smart. But while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. Look at verse 6. And at midnight, a cry was heard. What happened at midnight in Egypt? A cry was heard, the death of the firstborn. But for Israel, it was a cry of praise. It was a cry of prayer. It was a cry for the pain they were being released from. But we see, and at midnight a cry was heard, behold, the bridegroom is coming. The bridegroom is coming. Go out to meet him. What a perfect picture. Not only the first coming of Messiah as the Passover lamb, but the second coming of Messiah. Not as a lamb, but as a lion. So we have a roar going on here. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. Well, of course they are. And you knew they were empty. Verse 9, and the wise answered, saying, no, lest there should not be enough for us and you. But go rather to those who sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. The wedding. How interesting. If you take a look at verse 11, it says, afterwards the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. And he answered and said, assuredly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, watch, vigil, all-night prayer. Watch and pray. As you enter into temptation, right? He says, watch, therefore, which means pray in the night watches, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. Notice the imagery is that he's coming at night. Like a thief in the... What a powerful picture. Like a thief in the night. I love it. Look at Luke 21. It says, so during the days Yeshua was teaching in the what? Temple. Where was Solomon praying? In the temple. It says, but in the nights he went out and stayed on the Mount of Olives.
Amen.
Because the corrupt system of the temple affected Yeshua greatly, where he had to turn some tables over, probably at least once or maybe twice, depending on how you harmonize the Gospels. His favorite place of prayer wasn't the temple, although he went to the temple. He taught in the temple, but he prayed a little bit from the temple in the Mount of Olives. Same place he ascended from, the same place he will return. At the midnight cry, we'll be going home. The midnight cry. You ever think about that? At midnight. At your darkest hour, at midnight, he's going to redeem you. He's going to deliver you. He's going to set you free at midnight. As a thief in the night, he's coming back. As he came, he's coming. Ooh. I feel the Holy Spirit in this place. Watch. Look at this verse again. So during the days, I'm almost done. During the days of Yeshua was teaching in the temple, but in the night he went out and stayed on the Mount of Olives. Let's go to the next chapter. When the hour came, there it is again. When the hour came, Yeshua reclined at the table, and the emissaries, or the apostles, the sent ones with him. And he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you. You see, once we were slaves, but now we recline as kings at Passover, right? He says, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. Jump down to verse 39. And he came out and went as was his what? Custom. Taught in the day, went to pray at night. Taught in the day, went to pray at night. He came out and went as was his custom. Because it's nighttime. Passover is at night. You eat Passover at night because where was that midnight cry? At nighttime. He says, as was his custom. Just like his custom to go to Shabbat at the synagogue. And as Paul's custom was to go to synagogue on Shabbat. It was his custom to also go to the Mount of Olives after temple service. And the disciples followed him. And when he came to the place, he said to them, pray that you may not enter into temptation. What was Passover? An all-night vigil. An all-night prayer meeting. That God was going to hear the cry of the pain of his people. And God was going to deliver them through a Passover lamb. Do you see the type of shadow? Yeshua is our Passover lamb. Yeshua is saying at Passover, pray that you don't enter temptation. Look at verse 41. And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and knelt down and what? Prayed. And saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. They just had 4 cups. But Yeshua knew the 4th cup is a cup of fulfillment, a cup of praise. We're supposed to be praising him, but to fulfill that praise, a lamb has to die. Take this cup from me, nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. We know, we pray that in our own life every day, don't we? That the Father's will be done. Not ours, but the Father's will. Now, take a look at the points that I will close with today. What we learned when we compiled all these verses about Passover, about the midnight hour, about the full moon, about this moonlit midnight season, and that God did a miracle at the death of the firstborn, the 10th plague. God delivered Israel from Egypt by the blood of the Lamb. Are Israelis or Jewish people saved by sacrificial systems? No. They're saved by the outstretched arm of God. But by the blood of the Lamb on the doorpost, they were saved. Now watch this. Fill these in. Number 1, Hashem responds to our midnight pain. You might not know it, but what God sees you crying about in the midnight hour, he knows your pain and he responds to it. God says, I heard the cry of my people. I heard the pain they're going through. Have you ever cried so much where nobody knew you're just boo-hooing and bellowing out your tears and nobody understands? I understand what it's like for Pastor Mike and Pastor Cheryl Harlan that are in Detroit right now. And they're groaning inside because they've lost their firstborn daughter, their only child. I understand that. We prayed the Kaddish on behalf of them and their family that are going through mourning. This happened just last night. And I got the text at midnight.
Wow.
I got the text at midnight. And I'm thinking, Lord, this is crazy. I'm getting ready to teach about a midnight miracle. Then there's a death. And their granddaughter's going to have to either become their daughter, or someone else is going to have to step up and become that child's mother. A single mom that's now passed away. And the father gave his only son. Can you imagine the mourning of the father? His only begotten. And Yeshua mourning and grieving in the garden. Father, take this cup from me. But God responds. Hashem responds to our midnight cry. The second thing we see is that Hashem respects our midnight prayer. He respects that. Yeshua taught all day, but then he prayed all night. And that night, he prayed all night. He says, I need some prayer warriors with me. Will you pray all night with me? Next time you need to pray all night, get somebody to pray in that vigil with you. Pray all night. Will you agree with me in prayer? The third thing we see is Hashem receives our midnight praise. Our midnight praise. Now, did I put this on your outline?
Yes.
Acts?
Yeah, it's on there.
I forgot to put it on the PowerPoint, so I'm going to read this. I need an outline. Can I get an outline? I didn't put it on the PowerPoint. For some reason, I forgot. But I'm going to read directly from your notes. I'm glad I didn't forget to put it there. Look at Acts 16, verse 25. And it says, but about what time? Midnight. Paul and Silas did what? Prayed and sang hymns, or sang praises to God. And the prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a great earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. Immediately all the doors were unlocked and everyone's chains came loose. So obviously God receives our midnight praise. Now they didn't just pray, but they prayed and sang praises. Well, that's what Passover is about. You pray and you sing praises all night long through the Haggadah. That's what we do every year at Passover. But it also refers to our midnight pain, our prayer, and our praise that we should be giving to God in our darkest hours. He responds to your pain, He respects your prayer, and He receives your praise. Now watch this. Here's the reward. Number 4, Hashem rewards us with a midnight miracle and a Passover deliverance. If Yeshua is your Passover lamb, then anytime you need Him, all you have to know at the mention of His name, at the midnight prayer and the midnight praise service, at the mention of His name, He will become your lamb.
Amen.
The Lord will provide for Himself a lamb. And He has. Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Do you receive this message today? Stand to your feet today if you receive this moonlit midnight miracle during this time of a new season because of Rosh Chodesh. Shabbat should be a new month for you, a new season. And let's thank God that He hears our midnight pain.
Yeah.
Sees it. He hears that midnight cry and prayer. And He receives our midnight praise. Amen? But I know I'm believing for a midnight miracle. At midnight, He likes to show up. He likes to show out. And He likes to reveal His glory. Amen. Would you stretch your hands for the blessing? Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yihuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. Amen. May the Lord Adonai bless and keep you, shine His face upon you, be gracious to you, lift up His countenance upon you, and give you perfect peace. And Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, Yeshua HaMashiach. In His name we pray, B'Shem Yeshua. Amen. Amen. God bless you.
Thank you.
Praise the Lord. Don't forget to do your morning manna this week. We'll learn how God leads, how He fights for us, how He's going to get glorified, how He brings us through the sea. He gives us bread from heaven. And with that testimony, next week's message is called It's Time to Testify. So we're going to have a great time next week. Read your morning manna on the back. I also will put it and post it on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter this week, so starting today. So God bless all of you. And let's go into the fellowship hall and have the fruit of the vine that we've been hearing about and eat the bread that comes forth from the earth.
Parashat